In the vast landscapes of South America, a story of cultural fusion and resilience unfolds. Welcome to a journey through time as we delve into the captivating history of Japanese presence in this vibrant continent. Prepare to embark on a cinematic odyssey through history where East meets West and tradition meets innovation. From humble beginnings to lasting legacies, this is the tale of a community that defied distance and embraced opportunity. Welcome back to Legacy of the Unknown. Japanese people began to migrate to South America in the early 20th century to places like Argentina, Bolivia, Colombia, Paraguay, and Uruguay. However, Brazil and Peru in particular attracted the largest number of Japanese immigrants and have the most prominent and well-established Japanese communities in South America. Nikkei, or people of Japanese descent, began to immigrate to Brazil as temporary agricultural laborers at the beginning of the 20th century. Few of them wanted to move permanently. The majority were younger sons from rural parts of Japan who were experiencing economic instability as a result of Japan's modernization initiatives. The Japanese government helped immigrants to Brazil in the 1920s when the United States barred more Asian immigration under the auspices of the Kaigai Kogyo Kabushiki Kaisha, KKKK, the Overseas Development Corporation. Landowners in Brazil welcomed the newcomers to replace the slaves who had been set free, but they treated them no better than slaves. But why did Japan pick South America of all places? Japan had a close relationship with Portugal, as they were some of the first Europeans to arrive in the Far East some centuries earlier. Thus, Brazil was chosen for this reason and many other reasons. Economic opportunities. In the late 19th century, Japan experienced rapid industrialization and population growth. This led to economic challenges and limited employment opportunities for many Japanese citizens. South America, with its vast expanses of fertile land and booming industries like coffee cultivation, mining and agriculture, presented an attractive prospect for economic advancement and a chance for a better life. Government initiatives. The governments of both Japan and South American countries played a significant role in facilitating Japanese migration. Brazil, for instance, actively sought immigrants to address labor shortages in its expanding coffee plantations. The Brazilian government offered incentives such as subsidized transportation and land grants, making it an appealing option for Japanese citizens seeking new opportunities. Distance and cultural similarities. Although geographically distant from Japan, South America offered a sense of familiarity and cultural similarities for Japanese migrants. The mild climate, agricultural landscapes, and shared values of hard work and discipline resonated with Japanese farmers and laborers, making the transition to a new environment somewhat smoother. Avoiding overcrowding. Japan's population growth resulted in increased competition for limited resources and living space. South America's vast, untapped territories provided an opportunity for Japanese migrants to settle in less crowded areas, establish new communities, and build a brighter future for themselves and their families. Government support and networks. Japanese migrants could rely on existing networks and support systems established by earlier immigrants. By joining established Japanese communities in South America, newcomers gained access to valuable information, resources, and support networks, easing the process of integration and adaptation. Japan had also previously established relations with Peru in the late 19th and early 20th centuries as a broader effort by the Japanese government to modernize and establish diplomatic relations with various countries after the end of the Sakoku policy. After the arrival of the first wave of immigrants, to better their circumstances, Japanese laborers either migrated to metropolitan areas where they developed a range of small companies or took advantage of loans and land grants made available via the KKKK to buy their own farms in Brazil. These real estate purchases turned the temporary employees into long-term residents. Although Japan at the time had a rough understanding of and a small Catholic community, the majority that migrated practiced Buddhism or Shintoism. The old paradigm of white, black, and mixed race had kept the Japanese immigrants isolated, and Brazilians found it difficult to embrace a new immigrant population that did not fit this paradigm. By the 1930s, a public discussion on whether to forbid further immigration and the assimilation potential of Japanese as non-whites had broken out. Even though the Japanese were somewhat discriminated against, it was not to the point that they were ostracized completely. They were even respected to a small degree by the native-born population for their strong work ethic. During World War II, Japanese immigration had stopped completely. Brazil, along with many other Latin American countries, had declared war on Japan and the Axis powers. But by this point, around 200,000 Japanese had already arrived in the country. This population had been identified as a potential risk of future invasion because Japan's imperial army had plans to invade some, if not all, of South America. At this point in time, Japanese communities faced harsh discrimination and mistreatment during the war. Many were closely monitored by local authorities and intelligence agencies due to their ethnic ties to Japan. They were subjected to curfews and travel restrictions, similar to what occurred in North America. Their freedom of movement and activities was curtailed, and their rights were restricted based on their perceived association with Japan. Japanese-owned businesses faced difficulties and sometimes even confiscation of assets. Economic discrimination and exclusion from certain sectors were also observed. They were viewed with suspicion and subjected to negative stereotypes based on their ethnic background. There were instances of harassment and mistreatment directed at Japanese individuals and their families. Though it's important to note that the treatment of Japanese individuals in South America was not as widespread or systematic as the internment policies implemented in the United States and Canada. After the war, like in North America, efforts were made to address and rectify the mistreatment faced by Japanese communities. Steps were taken to promote understanding, reconciliation, and social integration, leading to another migration boom in the 1950s, with most concentrated in Sao Paulo. By the 1970s, Japanese Brazilians became leaders in architecture, business, politics, and the arts. Today, 2.3 million Brazilians are of Japanese descent. By the 1980s, about 2/3 of Japanese immigrants and their descendants identified as Roman Catholics, while just 25% remained with a traditional Japanese religion like Buddhism or Shintoism. Because of a shortage of unskilled industry employees in the 1980s, Japan actively sought out Nikki ancestors. The young middle-class Japanese Brazilians who accepted the offer experienced downward social mobility and identity revision as a result of this reverse migration, which was made possible by Brazil's economic crisis. Many Nikkei-jin returned to Brazil when the Japanese industrial sector stalled because they were despised by the native Japanese for performing hard work, lacking cultural adherence, and having no language skills. Today, Brazil celebrates Japanese Immigration Day on June 18th. It marks an important event in Brazil's history as the first Japanese immigrants arrived from southern Japan in 1908, and Japan has the largest carnival parade outside of Brazil. The Japanese Brazilian community today is a very religious and diverse group, with half practicing Catholicism and speaking Portuguese without knowing how to speak Japanese. In Peru, the Japanese population only makes up about 0.05% of the population. This is because many Japanese men came to Peru without their families and ended up marrying Peruvian women of varying races. There was even a Peruvian president of Japanese descent, Alberto Fujimori, whose legacy is very interesting in itself, to say the least. Many of his children are active in Peruvian politics today, with his daughter almost winning the presidency even. However, mirroring Japan itself, the Japanese population has been on the decline in recent years due to low birth rates and increased intermixing of other races in Brazil. About half of all marriages involving a Japanese spouse involve the other spouse being of non-Japanese origin. The final reason for the decline is a huge migration back to Japan, though not at the level of reverse migration. Japan has about 500,000 Latin American immigrants of Japanese descent. But just like how Japanese immigrants were seen as outsiders in Latin America, these Latin American immigrants are seen as foreigners in Japan due to their culture, languages, and religion. The Japanese journey in South America is a tale of resilience, cultural fusion, and lasting legacies. From humble beginnings as temporary agricultural laborers, the Japanese immigrants defied distance and embraced opportunities in countries like Brazil and Peru. Economic challenges, government initiatives, cultural similarities, and the search for better living conditions motivated their migration to South America. Despite facing discrimination and mistreatment during World War II, efforts were made to rectify past injustices, leading to social integration and the rise of Japanese Brazilians as leaders in various fields. We hope you enjoyed watching this video. Please hit that like and subscribe if you did, and we'll see you next time.